At 67, Elias Monroe should have been enjoying the quiet triumph of a life well fought. The ink had barely dried on the $64 million sale of Monroe Freight Systems, a company he built from a rusted-out delivery van and a dream. And now, surrounded by candlelight and opulence at Dorsey's, the city's most exclusive restaurant, he raised his glass of cranberry lime detox to the people he loved most, his only daughter Marissa and her charismatic husband Damien. To fresh starts, Elias smiled, and to learning how to finally sleep in past 4 a.m., they laughed. Damien's watch sparkled as he lifted his glass. To your empire, Elias, and to your legacy. May we carry it with pride. Elias held the smile, but inside, it flickered. He wasn't sure when Damien had stopped calling him Sir, or when his daughter had started avoiding eye contact during financial talk. But tonight, they were warm, polished, almost perfect. Too perfect. They looked like a couple in a commercial. Designer clothes, teeth too white, eyes too bright. Damien spoke of family trusts. Marissa kept brushing her father's arm and using words like protect and transition. But something felt staged, like a farewell masquerading as celebration. Elias gently swirled his cranberry lime over ice. He hadn't touched alcohol in months, not since his cardiologist warned him sternly, "Your heart's strong, but not immortal. Hydrate, rest, and no more bourbon." So he sipped what the waiter called clean juice for high achievers. He didn't expect that glass to nearly be his last. From across the room, a security guard was watching. His name tag read Jared T. He was in his 60s, black, and walked with the posture of someone who'd seen real battles, not bar fights. He didn't belong in the background. He was built to intervene. Elias noticed him when Jared stepped forward, politely, discreetly, and leaned down with a quiet urgency. "Mr. Monroe," he said, eyes scanning the room. "I don't mean to alarm you, but when your son-in-law returned from the restroom just now, I saw him pour something into your glass." The world halted. The music faded. The chandelier above seemed to buzz louder. Elias gripped the base of the glass, the liquid inside suddenly sinister. Damien was still dancing with Marissa near the piano, slow and confident, spinning her like a magician mid-act. Elias blinked, once, twice, then nodded slightly. Jared gave a near-invisible tap to his cap and vanished into the shadows. Elias didn't flinch, didn't scream, didn't accuse. He was a man who'd negotiated hostile takeovers and government audits. And now he understood. This wasn't dinner. It was bait. His throat tightened, but not from poison. He set the glass down. Took his napkin. Pretended to wipe his lips. And instead of finishing his drink, he finished his doubt. This wasn't paranoia. This was a plan. And the most dangerous lies were the ones that smiled at you across candlelight. He didn't drink the poison, but he let them think he did. By morning, the headlines could have read, "Billionaire collapses during celebration dinner." But instead, Elias Monroe woke up in his own bed, alive and sharper than ever. The damp napkin soaked in cranberry lime juice was folded neatly in a sealed bag in his jacket pocket. His first stop wasn't home, or hospital. It was a private diagnostics lab in the basement of a corporate medical center, the kind used by wealthy executives who preferred silence over scandal. The kind that didn't ask why a man would hand over a stained napkin at 3 a.m. and whisper, "I need full toxicology, organic, inorganic. No questions, no record." While the results processed, Elias sat alone at a corner booth in an all-night diner, pretending to drink black coffee, pretending to be tired. But he wasn't tired, he was calculating. His mind, once used to balancing freight contracts and union negotiations, was now working through an entirely different supply chain. Intent, method, motive, consequence. Damien and Marissa weren't just entitled, they were cornered. And cornered people always choose fire over failure. The lab results came back at dawn. 2,500 milligrams of metoprolol per 100 milliliter, enough to induce a fatal heart attack in a man with his cardiac history, and make it look perfectly natural. The clean juice hadn't been clean at all. It was the perfect murder, wrapped in cranberry and crushed ice. When his phone rang later that day, Elias didn't hesitate. Marissa's voice, syrupy sweet. "Dad, oh thank God, we were so worried. You left in such a rush. Is everything okay?" He let silence breathe on the line, then replied with a practiced cough and a sigh. "Just indigestion, sweetheart. I saw the doctor. Said it was nothing, all that rich food. But it scared me enough to rethink a few things." Another pause. Damien's voice cut in. "That's good to hear, sir. And yes, we all need to take better care. Maybe this is a sign. You've worked so hard. Maybe it's time to start putting things in place for the future." There it was, the hook. Elias didn't bite. Not yet. He dangled the bait. "I've been thinking the same. I spoke to Kendra this morning. You remember her, right? My lawyer?" "Of course," Damien said quickly. "We're talking about setting up something permanent. A family trust. Something that lives beyond me. For all of us." They were quiet, then overly grateful. Marissa. That's incredible, Dad. But we don't expect anything, you know? They were already expecting everything. And Elias let them. Over the next week, they hovered. Daily calls, daily check-ins. Suddenly showing up with food, hugs, overeager smiles. Marissa brought him herbal soup. Damien offered to help manage some of the real estate. Both started referring to him as Dad again, like when they still needed his approval for their wedding. But now, they didn't need love. They needed access. And Elias? He played along, the grateful old man. He let them believe he was slowing down, that the episode had rattled him, that he was nostalgic, sentimental, softening, that he was exactly the man they needed him to be, to sign things without reading. But behind the curtains, a machine was moving. Kendra Valen, his legal advisor and his late wife, Aria's goddaughter, had activated a Black Ops-level team of investigators, ex-IRS agents, former FBI, cyber sleuths. Their job? Tear apart Damien and Marissa's lives. Bank accounts, burner phones, IP logs, hidden loans, secret visits, every whisper of betrayal. And all Elias had to do was smile, drink his soup, and keep the illusion alive. They thought he was healing. He was, in fact, hunting. By the 8th day, they were practically buzzing with victory. Marissa had started sending Elias design ideas for the Foundation website. Damien texted daily with updates about estate planning firms, just in case Kendra needed help. They were so deep into the illusion, they didn't even realize they were being choreographed. Elias kept them close. He took their calls. He let them think they mattered. He made vague remarks like, "I'm proud of you both. It's comforting to know I can leave things in capable hands." They ate it up. He even let Damien bring over a notary, just to get some logistics in order. Elias chuckled and waved it off with grandfatherly warmth. "Let's wait for the big day, son. Cynthia's planning a formal signing for next week. You'll both be there, of course." Their eyes lit up. That was all the confirmation they needed. Meanwhile, Cynthia Valen was building a case that would make prison look like mercy. Her team delivered their first file at 2 a.m., encrypted and cold. Subject: Marissa and Damien Cole. Phase 1: Financial Forensics. Elias read it in silence, in the study he had once called his fortress. $2.4 million in unsecured debt, luxury credit cards, high-interest personal loans, private lenders. They were 90 days past due on 2 mortgages, on a house Elias had paid for as a wedding gift. Their luxury cars, a Porsche Cayenne and a BMW M5, were under repossession. They had been flipping credit cards to pay other credit cards. They weren't rich. They were faking rich with borrowed time. Elias leaned back, the words blurring. For a moment he thought the betrayal was about greed, but the report told a darker story. This wasn't just ambition. It was desperation. They hadn't tried to kill him just to get more. They tried to kill him because they were running out of options. To them, the $64 million wasn't inheritance. It was a lifeline. He remembered Marissa at age 6, helping Aria fold canvases in the sunroom. He remembered Damien's nervous handshake the first time he met him, asking for her hand and her heart. Now both of them had bet their lives on a single card, Elias dying soon enough, and when nature didn't do it fast enough. They reached for a vial, but that wasn't the worst part. The report came with a second file, labeled Supplemental Discovery, Unauthorized Medical Access. At first Elias didn't understand, until he saw a copy of a forged medical power of attorney, granting Damien full access to his hospital records. Signed 3 months ago, filed with the health system Elias used exclusively. The signature looked almost perfect, but it wasn't his. The report continued. Damien had requested Elias's full cardiac history, latest test results, known drug interactions, dosage sensitivity, prescribed beta blockers, and the final nail, Cynthia's cyber team had traced searches from burner phones and public Wi-Fi sessions, all logged under Damien's alias. Fast-acting heart attack drugs, beta blockers that don't show up in autopsy, dosage to kill 67-year male, Bantu cardiac condition. Make death look natural, legal advice. Elias dropped the printed page onto the desk. His hands didn't shake, not anymore. This wasn't a mistake, he whispered. It was a strategy. They thought they were getting a legacy. They were writing their own obituary. 4 days later, the second report arrived. Subject line, Update, Asset Exploitation, Phase 2. Elias thought he had seen the worst. He hadn't. This report wasn't about debt. It wasn't about forged documents or burner phones. It was about what they were already trying to sell while he was still breathing. Elias Monroe had been many things. A painter, an activist, a mother, and the kind of woman who saw color where others saw shadow. She never sold much of her work. Never wanted to. These aren't investments, she used to say, smiling. They're windows into how I survived the storm. Each painting in their home wasn't just framed. It was rooted. Every brushstroke told the story of a miscarriage, a cancer scare, a wedding day, a protest march. And apparently, Marissa had been cataloging them. The report detailed several recent communications with high-end galleries in Chicago, Boston, and New York. The caller? Marissa Cole. She had claimed to be the sole heir of Aria's private collection. She had sent high-resolution images of each piece, taken discreetly over the last 2 months during care visits to Elias's home. She spoke with carefully composed grief, claiming, "My father's health has declined significantly. We're handling the estate now, quietly. He wants the collection dispersed before things become complicated." Elias stopped reading. He stood, slowly, and turned to face the painting directly behind him. A riot of indigo and burnt orange. Aria had painted it the week she finished chemotherapy. "This is what healing feels like," she told him. "It's messy and terrifying, but it's alive." He stared at it, remembering her hands, the way she would tilt the brush, step back, whisper to the canvas. And now, their daughter had priced it, indexed it, marketed it, as if it were a commodity, not a legacy. The investigator's notes included a transcript. The gallery assistant, secretly part of Cynthia's team, had asked Marissa why she was selling now. "He's on his way out," Marissa said flatly. "We're just trying to do right by her work. before it gets complicated. That word again. Complicated. It wasn't grief. It was code for before he catches on. Elias felt something crack inside, and then reforge into steel. He wasn't just dealing with financial betrayal. He was dealing with desecration. His son-in-law had tried to poison him, but his own daughter was trying to erase her mother. He picked up the phone. Cynthia answered on the first ring. "It's done," Elias said, his voice different now, stronger. "The mask is off. No more delay. I don't want revenge. I want erasure." Cynthia paused. "Are you sure?" "They touched the wrong part of my life," he said. "They touched her. Some betrayals are about money. Others are about memory. The latter are unforgivable." The elevator ride to the 40th floor was quiet. Marissa adjusted her designer blazer in the mirrored walls. Damien tapped his fingers against the brushed steel handrail, a Rolex gleaming beneath his cuff. They were dressed like people expecting a windfall, not a reckoning. "Just smile. We've got this," Marissa whispered as the doors opened. The office was silent, polished, clinical. Cynthia Valen stood waiting at the end of the long corridor. No assistant, no paralegal. Just her. Just the trap. "Welcome," she said with professional warmth. "Mr. Monroe is already inside." Damien and Marissa stepped into the boardroom, all dark glass, stone walls, and silence thick enough to slice. Elias stood by the window, back turned, hands clasped behind him. He didn't move. On the glossy table sat a stack of 5 navy blue legal folders, each precisely aligned. To them, it looked like a will, but it wasn't. It was a funeral for illusions. They hugged Elias, kissed his cheek. He didn't flinch. He didn't smile. They didn't notice. They were too focused on the folders, like children waiting for gifts. "The Callahan Family Trust," Damien murmured, reading the top line. "It even sounds like legacy." Elias finally turned. His expression was unreadable, carved in stone. "Before we sign anything," Cynthia said, seating herself across from them, "there are a few clarifications." She opened the first folder. Inside, the toxicology report from the napkin sample. Neatly highlighted, stamped, time-stamped. "This is a chemical analysis," Cynthia said coolly, "of the beverage consumed, or nearly consumed, by Mr. Monroe at Dorsey's restaurant." She pushed it across the table. Damien went still. Marissa frowned. "It shows a lethal dose of metoprolol tartrate, 2,500 milligrams, enough to induce a heart attack, and make it look natural." Silence. Cynthia opened the second folder. "Item 2, your financials, consolidated debt, foreclosure timelines, loan defaults, credit fraud, high-risk lenders." She slid it over. Marissa didn't touch it. Her hands were trembling. The third folder was opened. A transcript of Marissa's phone calls to art galleries. A printed email chain. Photographs of Elias's private collection attached. Item 3. Attempted sale of non-transferable legacy assets under false pretenses while the collector was still living. Marissa's lip quivered. Damien shot her a look. Betrayed and bitter. Fourth folder. Item 4. A forged medical power of attorney, giving Mr. Cole full control of Mr. Monroe's health decisions, and a forensic report confirming the signature was fabricated. Cynthia let that land in the silence. Then, the final folder. Search histories. IP logs, burner phone purchases. Phrases like, "how to fake a natural death, heart attack drug that doesn't show up in autopsy, dosage for elderly male with cardiac issues." Damien couldn't speak. Marissa looked like she might vomit. "There will be no trust," Elias finally said. His voice steady, cold. "There will be no inheritance. There will be no legacy for you." He stood slowly, walked around the table, and looked them both in the eye. "You have 2 choices," he said quietly. "Prison or disappearance. This wasn't a signing, it was a sentencing." The silence in the boardroom was no longer awkward. It was funeral silent. No one moved. No one breathed. The only sound was the quiet hum of the city, 40 stories below. Damien's face had turned a shade of ash. Marissa sat frozen, her eyes glossy with unshed tears, not from guilt, but from the sudden collapse of the life she thought she owned. Elias remained standing. His presence had shifted. He was no longer the frail old man. He was the storm they never prepared for. "You were going to kill me," he said, voice even, "and I'm giving you a way out. That's more than you gave me." Cynthia slid a single, thick document across the table. A fountain pen rested on top. Black ink, silver barrel, deliberate elegance. "This is what you'll sign," she said. It wasn't a trust document. It was a full, binding, irrevocable severance agreement, drafted with surgical precision. The terms: Damien and Marissa would relinquish all current and future claims to the Monroe estate, including assets, insurance, retirement, holdings, and real property. They would transfer the deed to their heavily mortgaged home, which had quietly been purchased and paid off by one of Elias's shell companies, to the Elias Monroe Foundation. They would surrender all physical and digital access to Elias's properties, accounts, and communications. In exchange, Elias would not press charges, but the evidence, every last document, recording, and forensic report, would be held in escrow. Should they violate a single clause, it would be handed directly to the district attorney. They were being offered freedom, but at a cost. Complete erasure. No wealth, no legacy, no name. Damien finally spoke, voice raw, like gravel in his throat. "What happens if we don't sign?" Cynthia didn't flinch. "Then you're escorted out of here in handcuffs within the hour. Attempted murder, fraud, conspiracy, medical forgery. You'll both be convicted. You'll lose everything, and then lose it again behind bars." Marissa broke. Tears fell. One hand covered her mouth. The other reached, trembling, for the pen. "I didn't want this," she whispered. Elias didn't respond. He didn't even blink. "Wanting it," he said, "would have made it human. But you planned it. You rehearsed it. You watched me drink." She signed first. Her signature, once so sharp and proud, now wavered across the page like a dying breath. Damien followed. He didn't read it. He didn't ask questions. He just signed, because there was nothing left to say. When they finished, Cynthia collected the documents with gloved precision. She didn't look at them. She simply pressed a discreet intercom button. The assistant returned, quiet, poised. "Show them out," Cynthia said. Marissa stood on shaking legs. Damien supported her. They walked slowly, not like people leaving a meeting, but like people being exiled from a kingdom they never truly belonged to. Elias remained still until the door clicked shut. Then, only then, did he sit down. He didn't sigh. He didn't smirk. There was no sense of triumph, only the quiet finality of a necessary ending. The trust didn't pass down wealth. It passed down a lesson, written in ink, signed in silence. 3 months had passed. The Monroe estate sat silent on the hilltop, the same hill where Elias had once imagined generations gathering for holidays, laughter echoing through marble halls, grandchildren running through manicured gardens. Now, not a soul had stepped inside since the day Damien and Marissa walked out with nothing but their shame. The staff had been let go with generous severance. The art had been relocated. The wine cellar was locked, untouched. Elias never returned. He didn't need to. The house had been built for the wrong future, and now it had no place in the present. Elias Monroe now lived in a 2-bedroom converted loft above a reclaimed textile mill in the heart of the city's forgotten arts district. No security gate, no elevator, just stairs, exposed beams, and windows that opened to noise, laughter, graffiti, life, where silence used to feel like control. Now it just felt like death. And Elias had already died once, the night his daughter looked him in the eye and lied with a smile. Instead of inheritance, he left impact. The Elias Monroe Foundation launched quietly but fiercely. Its mission was simple: fund the future that Aria believed in. Within weeks, it had awarded 12 grants to Black, Indigenous, and Latinx visual artists, startup funds for a mobile arts van bringing mural workshops to low-income neighborhoods, a scholarship fund for single mothers in creative writing programs, and yes, a wolf sanctuary in Oregon, because Aria once said, "Wolves are how the wilderness sings." Elias sat in every first board meeting. He said little. He let the young people speak. He just listened. Like Aria always did, on the 17th day of the Foundation's life, he attended a gallery opening downtown. The artist was 23, non-binary, first-generation Haitian American. They had applied to the Foundation on a whim, not expecting to get selected. Their voice cracked as they addressed the crowd. "I don't come from wealth, I don't come from safety, but I do come from stories. And because of this grant, I get to keep telling them." They gestured to a 9-foot mixed media canvas, a tempest of shadow, broken mirrors, and torn denim soaked in acrylic reds. Elias stood still. He saw echoes of Aria, the same refusal to be quiet, the same insistence on being seen. When the artist approached him later, they were shaking. "Mr. Monroe, your wife saved my life, and she doesn't even know me." He didn't correct them, because maybe she did. Later that night, Elias lingered alone in the gallery. No family, no legacy dinners, no gold-framed photos on a fireplace. Just art, just youth, just hope with a heartbeat. He leaned against a column and looked at the floor. He thought of Kevin, the boy he lost long ago. He thought of Marissa, the child who stopped looking at him like a father the moment money entered the conversation. And then he thought of Aria. "If you're seeing this," he whispered under his breath, "it's working. You win." He had given up $64 million and gained something that couldn't be measured in zeros, peace that couldn't be purchased, a legacy that couldn't be poisoned, a future built not from bloodlines, but from belief. He turned toward the exit, coat over his arm, the night crisp and full of sirens, and just as he reached the door, he paused. He looked back one last time at the wall of paintings, at stories being born, at voices that had once been silenced, now unafraid to scream. That was the moment Elias Monroe realized. He hadn't been erased. He had been reborn. They tried to kill a man, but they accidentally gave birth to a movement. It took less than a year for Damien and Marissa Cole to disappear. Not from the world, but from relevance. They lived for a while in a rundown rental home in Arizona under assumed names. No press release was ever made. No charges were filed. Their names were never in the news. But in certain quiet circles, law firms, private banks, trust offices, everyone knew. A whispered warning. "Don't touch them. They're radioactive." Damien, once proud of his networking and charisma, couldn't get a job past middle management. He worked briefly in car sales, then insurance, then something involving outbound phone calls he refused to talk about. He stopped wearing watches. The last Rolex had been pawned 6 months in, for less than a month's rent. Marissa tried to write a book, a memoir about forgiveness, about growth. No publisher picked it up, because no one wanted to hear a redemption arc from someone who had forged a death plot and priced her mother's soul in JPEGs. She deleted her social media accounts, started painting again, alone, in silence, in a rented storage unit with no heat. Her work wasn't bad, but it wasn't honest. And the world has a way of recognizing dishonesty when it's been broadcast in high definition. Once, years later, a former board member of a small gallery mentioned seeing her at an open mic night in Tucson. She was selling handmade postcards, not signing books, not shaking hands, just selling fragments of something that used to be a future. Meanwhile, the Elias Monroe Foundation grew. It outlived every dollar Elias expected it to spend. It survived political pushback. It thrived on community love. Within 5 years, it had opened art studios in 12 underserved neighborhoods across 3 states, helped over 300 young artists publish their first works, sponsored full rides for 18 students to attend art school, launched a biennial festival featuring activist artists from marginalized communities, and somewhere on a quiet wall in the foundation's main gallery was a single plaque. In memory of Elias Monroe. You don't need to be seen by the world. You just need to make the world worth seeing. Oh, beneath it hung a painting, the very one Damien tried to sell. A sea of vibrant red and indigo, chaos and light, signed simply, Aria. Elias Monroe never spoke of Damien or Marissa again. Not out of bitterness, but because some stories don't deserve a sequel. He passed away 11 years later, at the age of 78, peacefully, with a sketchbook beside him and brushstrokes drying on his hands. But he left behind something far more alive than money ever could. A legacy built not from inheritance, but from integrity. Not from blood, but from choice. They tried to take everything from him, so he gave everything to the world instead. If this story moved you, let it move others too. Legacy isn't just what we leave. It's what we share. Like, comment your thoughts and share this video with someone who believes redemption isn't inherited. It's earned. Because sometimes the quietest stories leave the loudest echoes.